Hey everyone, welcome to PunkCast. My name is William Maxwell. I'm a student of Web3 and the owner of Punk6825. Cryptopunks are 10,000 uniquely generated characters stored permanently on the Ethereum blockchain. No punk is the same. This is a show dedicated to celebrating the punks behind the punk. My hope for this podcast is that we capture the essence of the punk culture, elevate the brand and the individual behind the punk. One last thing. Projects discussed on the show is not financial advice. Crypto and NFTs are a volatile and risky asset class. Please always do your own research. Other than that, let's go. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of PunkCast. Today we've got Punk6825. She's a 280 and wears purple eyeshadow and a beautiful orange knitted cap. She's the ultimate lorekeeper, writing poems and lore for some of the well-known projects in the space, such as Forgotten Ruins, Solarverse, and Rotten Antisocial Club. Please welcome Lorepunk.eth to the show. Lorepunk, how are you?
Thank you. I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
Very well, very well. I'm sure we've got a lot of things to sort of unpack. It's been a while since we've had the last conversation. Seems like you've been pretty busy on the project front.
Absolutely. I've been doing lots of fun writing.
Well, maybe I guess we can just start off slowly then. I think the general question I normally ask punks is basically how they came up with the name Lorepunk. This might be a bit self-explanatory, I'm guessing.
Well, yeah, I mean, basically, I got my punk, and I was very pleasantly surprised by how effective it was using it as a sort of a flagship for my brand and a digital identity. So I just wanted to combine what I do, lore, with the punk, which is the brand recognition, and it's just been a really good title for me.
No, that's cool. Very punchy. Maybe if you could share with everybody your background and how you got into, I guess, the profession of writing lore.
Sure. I started out in crypto and NFTs. You know, I've been involved off and on in crypto since like 2012, but I picked it up again in 2021 because I just wanted a hobby that had very little to do with my day job at the time. So I read the news about Beeple's very big sale with the first 5,000 days, and I was like, oh, this NFT stuff sounds like a lot of fun. It's really cool. So I jumped onto Clubhouse. And then I was talking with a lot of the artists at that point who were really just building their careers in NFTs. It was an amazing time. And I started offering writing because lots of times artists will need an artist statement or a description or any other kind of text to promote their work. So I started offering that for free to some folks to get started, particularly people whose English isn't their first language. And then, Dario De Siena, who's an amazing artist, took me up on that offer. And I've been writing for him for a long time. You know, through him, I got to meet lots of other amazing creators. And so then I kind of moved beyond just sort of artists' descriptions to lore and storytelling when the PFP craze took off. Because in order for a community to really engage with, a collection of digital characters or visual art, then there needs to be some storytelling behind that, behind the traits, behind the background and the world that these characters inhabit. And so I really just started to enjoy doing that work. Particularly, Claire Silver posted a Forgotten Runes wizard before the project launched on Twitter, and I wrote a poem about this wizard, and it blew her mind. It blew the Forgotten Runes people's minds. And so they invited me on to start writing poems to contribute to the lore, and it just kind of went from there.
That's super cool. I mean, just out of curiosity as well. I mean, Chat GPT and AI. Are you leveraging any of that for helping you write any of the lore, or I guess what are your sort of feelings towards towards that sort of new technology?
The new technology is great. The context in which it's likely to be used is deeply troubling and problematic. Basically, it's just, there are capitalist organizations that are wanting to make profit, and they're going to want to save money, and they're going to think, okay, if I can get this AI, this language model, to produce my content for me, then I don't have to hire writers, and I'll save money. And I understand why they're doing that, but there's profound limits to what Chat GPT can do, particularly at this stage. And it's, you can't solve a social problem with technology. And what we really have here is a social problem where, instead of creating value, there's a lot of organizations that are just looking for profit, which is somewhat different.
Mm,
And so you get the use of art AIs and text AIs at this point. And you just sort of lose kind of that spark of originality, because the chat gpt model in particular, it's been around for quite a long time, but it's really just based on stuff that human beings have already created.
mm,
um, it's very useful as a brainstorming tool, to work with it as an artist or a writer. For instance, I've had Chat GPT come up with names for me, like when I've been trying to think of names for various people in the Rotten Antisocial Club. And I was extremely pleasantly surprised with the quality of the names that it came up with. But in terms of actually getting it to write an original story or something like that, I've not had a lot of luck with that, and I just don't really like the outputs that it comes up with. Even if you're trying to get it to write an educational essay, it's got a really particular tone and voice that is quite easy to recognize. If you go onto a website like Quora or Reddit, a lot of the times you can kind of pick out where there's been an answer that's been provided by ChatGPT. It's very recognizable. I think that will get less and less recognizable as time goes on, but I always think that there's going to be a place for original writing. There's just no replacing it. That kind of innovation and creativity that you get with an experienced human storyteller. The risk is, if corporations and companies decide that good enough is good enough, then they're going to really affect negatively the entire kind of economy for original human storytelling. And we can't let that happen. But
mm,
the question is whether we have the power to stop it from happening.
mm. Well, I know it's a super fascinating emerging sort of technology, right? So, be keen to sort of see how this sort of works its way out. But I guess there is a special touch when it comes from a real person, right? But I guess just out of curiosity as well, like going back into deeper into your sort of background, how did you find your passion for writing? Like, was it something that you were doing during high school, university, and sort of found your way into it? Like, how did you sort of develop that skill set?
I mean, I've been writing my entire life, since I was a kid. It's been one of my strongest skills. And so, when you're a kid, you want to please the adults around you. So, they were often very positive about my writing. So, I got excited about it and really focused in on it, as well as reading a whole lot, reading stuff that was probably, a bit more difficult than my age group would have indicated, when I was a kid. So, experimenting with all kinds of different styles and voices, like any kid will.
Mm,
But then, I've done all kinds of writing since then, whether it's been at work, whether it's been at university, whether I did a bunch of journalism for a long time.
mm,
So I've written in national and international publications. I've had the great opportunity of being edited by some amazing, tough editors in that work, who's gotten my work even better in quality. And so at the same time, I've also been writing poetry, and I really just worked on that, pushed myself hard, and published a book of poetry last year as well in the traditional Web 2 world, as we call it. But I can't imagine a life where I'm not a writer. It's just as natural to me as breathing, really.
Hmm. No, I've read some of your stuff. You write some really beautiful, flowery words, which is which is pretty rare in the space. And I guess just going back a little bit too into, I guess, your Clubhouse experience, and initiating, I guess, your relationship with Dario, who's also another pretty high profile artist in punk as well. I guess what sort of piqued your interest in particular around getting into Web3 and crypto? Like, what sort of drove you into the space?
I mean, I was working at a very intense job at the time. That was extremely stressful, extremely high pressure, and I just wanted to have a creative outlet, and something fun to do that had nothing to do with my job. So, in January of 2021, I bought 500 quid of Bitcoin and 500 quid of Ether. Just to dabble with maybe some altcoins, a little bit of investing, and stuff like that to enjoy. But then at the same time, I encountered the NFT space because I saw that article about Beeple. And then just clicking around on people's Twitters and stuff, I saw links to Clubhouse events. Clubhouse, it was the golden age of Clubhouse. And there were, people in the space just sort of teaching each other, all learning together how to create art on the blockchain, how to market that art, how to build and grow their platform and community. And it was really like getting in on the ground floor of the NFT space, that was just primed for explosion in the bull run of 2021. And so from Clubhouse, I was on Twitter. I was writing poems on Twitter about people's bits and pieces of NFT art. I got a direct message from Digital Art Chick one day who I'd been following, and I quite liked that account. And I remember I made this kind of shriek noise, like, "Oh my goodness, Senpai noticed me." And she DMs me and it's like, "I'm doing this Ether Poems thing. Do you want to get involved?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah." So I did Ether Poems 1, which sold out, and then we got involved in Ether Poems 2. I learned a whole lot about how to market, and produce content, product, and whatever for an NFT project just from that. And then, I was in the right place at the right time because on the day that Twitter released their 140 collection, I was sitting in the Ether Poets Discord server, and everyone's like, "Wow, Twitter's giving away these NFTs." And then they were talking about it because Twitter's Twitter account had put Art Chick's tweet on its cover, so that's the link there. And then I wrote a poem to Twitter asking for one of the NFTs. They gifted me the reply guy, and then within half an hour I had sold that for 50 ETH. ETH was a bit over $2,000 at the time.
Wow.
So I had this pile of ETH, and that gave me anxiety for 2 weeks or so with its volatility. And so I'm like, screw this, I'm buying a punk. I'm going to hedge some of this. So I bought a punk. I think it was at the end of July of 2021, and then the punk value obviously went up to like 400,000. And sometimes it's like, shit, I should have bought two, or I should have sold it and then bought back in. But I've had the punk since then, and
So
I've had real.
is that the current punk you have now, 6825?
It is. I've always
Uh,
had this punk, and so if you go onto the record for this punk, you'll see that I've transferred it once between wallets, when I was having basically a security day, and just sort of rotating where
Yeah.
everything lives. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's always been mine since 2021.
Oh, amazing. And yeah, you got in pretty early at looks at 15 ETH. Did you get it?
I got it at like
Okay, 17
17.25 or
ETH.
something. Yeah.
That's still really good, right? That's kind of crazy. And just, you bring back some memories. I mean, I remember Art Chick in her prime during that bull market. I remember it was her and Beanie as punks that were just constantly sort of on Twitter and just pushing out some really funny content. I found them really entertaining. I know, like they probably don't have the best reputation, but I actually really enjoyed, I guess, their presence on Twitter that in that during that sort of bull cycle. What was your experience with Darchick like?
I mean, my experience with Art Chick was extremely good. I've always, if you actually look at her stuff, it's pretty solid stuff that she's been putting out there, and really good messages. There's a lot of people who think, maybe Art Chick has rugged them or is screwed, with content about some project or other. And I've had no evidence of that. I will always be grateful to Art Chick for pretty much everything that she's done, because I wouldn't be where I am in the space without her. And she's kind of changed her tack, and she's a lot quieter on Twitter. And I really wish her well. But from what I remember, and I haven't looked up or refreshed my memory on this. A lot of the things that she was accused of, like pumping projects or whatever. Or having a shill token. There have been people in the space that have done orders of magnitude worse things than what she's been accused of, and have been forgiven. So if you look at, like, Azuki, if you look at Zagabond and Azuki, he's been forgiven, like, for some very serious stuff. And it kind of, leads me to question, is Art Chick being held to a different standard because she's a woman? There's
Mm.
also a lot of critique of Art Chick, like people saying that she's not actually a woman and stuff like that. And some
I
really kind of,
remember that.
yeah, some really misogynist stuff.
And she came up with a video clip basically showing that she was a woman, basically, right? Actually, maybe if we can go back a step as well for those that don't know Art Chick. Could you just maybe describe, I guess, what a sort of profile is like within sort of the crypto space, Lorepunk, so everybody has a bit of context?
Art Chick is basically an influencer in the NFT space, who in 2021 particularly was very, very frequently tweeting, promoting projects, giving people advice, like good advice. And she had kind of a personality that was like this super mean but funny and smart, but also with a lot of compassion. And she was quite direct, about a project if she didn't think it was a good project. And a lot of people took issue with that, with
Mm.
her kind of mode or tone of speaking. But I always really liked it.
I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was really entertaining, and it's very tongue in cheek, very cheeky. It was kind of fun. And so you worked on a project with her. I think you mentioned Ether Poems. Like, can you just maybe explain what that was, just out of curiosity?
Absolutely. Ether Poems was a small collection of images with poems on them, and she selected a bunch of poets to write poems for it. And we had to get an artist or whatever to do the art if we couldn't do the art ourselves, and that sold out. That was my first time being part of a drop, and the drop sold out. And I remember being up all night in the Discord, like shrieking and cheering with everybody. And I got a couple $1,000s out of that at the end. Holy crap, that was new. That felt really good. And then we did another one, Ether Poems 2, where we had video poems. And that one didn't sell out. That one stalled, and they closed the mint And I think they released the poems, to existing collectors because she mistimed the market and the price was too high.
Mm.
Gas was really high for that one, but I look back on that and remember how frustrated and upset we all were that it didn't succeed. And then I'm like patting myself on the head from the far future, going, "Oh, you sweet summer child," because with the bear market and everything else, I've been part of projects that have stalled out at launch or failed. Some of them have minted out and succeeded, and you just get all up in your feelings when your project doesn't work out the way you think it's gonna, and you start
Mm.
taking it personally, but it's really not personal. But that's a lesson that I learned with our chick, and I also learned how to manage a project, how to coordinate a whole bunch of work.
Mm.
um, and because I was working with a couple of different video producers, and I had to edit and sync music with all these videos and read my poems over it, and it was very, very hard work, but I proved to myself that I could do it, and a whole bunch of other cool people, amazing poets, at the same time, we're working, and learning the same things. So yeah, it was a huge learning opportunity for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And so during that sort of period as well, I think you sort of spoke about Dario. Like, what was your work with Dario?
Yeah, so with Dario, basically Dario is an amazing, hardworking digital artist who is both extremely talented and also very commercial in like a really cool way. So he was producing the Third Eye collection, which is just beautiful visual graphic collection that he has, and Minds, which are these others kind of PFP style collection that he had, and it was really cool to work with him. Dario is a really amazing fine artist, who's also very successful commercially. Amazing high work ethic. And so he is a great artist, but his English is a second language for him. He's from Switzerland, so he speaks Swiss German,
Mm.
and so he invited me on to do his English writing for him, and so I got to do writing for the Third Eye collection, for the Minds collection, which was an amazing PFP project that he did, and also for a collection that he released in 2022 during the Free Mint era, which is the Rotten Antisocial Club. Uh,
Mm.
so that's a really fun collection of animated piles of trash that all want to everything in the whole market to go to zero, and they live in this sort of municipality called Zero Valley. um, and so I've been writing all kinds of stuff for that, whether it's storytelling, whether it's tweets in the form of poems, just all kinds of stuff for that project. But with Dario, I got a really good kind of tour of all the different ways that you can do art in NFTs, because writing for him is a front row seat to his amazing business brain, and I'm
Mm.
very, very grateful to him, and I've learned a whole lot from him.
That's awesome. So Dario is the guy behind Rotten Antisocial Club. I'm taking a look at it now. It looks very it's got a goblins sort of vibe to it in some ways in terms of the artwork.
It does, and we released that shortly after Goblins, but we wanted to have an entirely different world that maybe captured some of the vibe, but was an entirely different world. So,
Mm.
the Goblins project is an amazing, wonderful project, from Truth Labs, with its own, incredible world building. Whereas Rotten Antisocial Club is a little bit more meta. So if you're looking through the traits, you'll see, kind of rip-offs of ape merch, like an ape shirt that's got a bunch of holes and stains in it, and there's a cool cat that looks like this beat up old stuffed animal. It's like an ass cat. So it's a little bit of meta, talking about zero, talking about like companies that have rugged the whole space, like Three Arrows Capital, what have you, Luna. There's Luna memes in there.
Mm.
So it's a little bit more self-referential than Goblins, but it also has its own unique world building. That, the closer the market gets to zero, the more excitement, the more magic there
Yeah.
is in Zero Valley.
No, that's super cool. It's good to sort of see these projects sort of, I guess, have a shot at the space, right? And I think a lot of the times, as well as some of these projects that get launched, they are missing a little bit of a story and a narrative
Hmm.
to really try and carve them through. I think from your perspective, like, why do you sort of feel like lore is really critical for the survival of any project?
I think that, a lot of the times you will have some projects with beautiful art that are coming out. But without storytelling, it just kind of feels flat. Because everyone wants to build a community with their NFT project. And in order for that to happen, there needs to be something that those members of the community can engage with. So there needs to be at least some storytelling, because people are going to come up with communities based around particular rarities and traits. They're going to come up with particular traits of a PFP collection that they seem more valuable than their rarity would otherwise indicate. And a lot of the times, the reason that happens is because of the storytelling. The community might come up with that story all on their own, or they might take something that the founders have provided and really run with it. That's something that happens, and it's often a give and take between the community and the founders with the story. But if you include some storytelling or some lore, then you can influence the behavior of the community or of the collectors. If you're having a story with your PFP projects, for instance, with Forgotten Runes, there was the release of the Beasts in this first season of the Beasts, which are these one of one creatures in the Forgotten Runes universe that went on auction. But in order for the Beasts to be released, a bunch of wizards with a particular trait that held a key, um, or a spell, in their hand as their prop. These particular tokens had to sort of sign into the website and do a transaction, gas only transaction, I think it was, in order to unlock the locks on the gate that released the first beast. And so, how is that useful? It's useful in a lot of ways because the beasts are like tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands, some of them, and most holders don't have the money for that, but they can participate by unlocking the gate. And if you unlocked the gate, you got airdropped this little lock made out of gold, and then you could burn this lock months and months later, to gild your weapon. When the Warriors collection came out, so it was exciting. There was free stuff. There was rarity. There was storytelling. There was community engagement. In order to release the first beast, and so that's just a really good example of how lore can get your whole community
Mm.
involved. The other thing is that you got your community producing content for you, and various ideas come up. Again with Forgotten Runes, there was this whole idiotic meme that was delightful and hilarious about a cucumber that's hollowed out in the middle, and you put a hot dog inside it, and it's called a cucumber dog. And there was a bit of tension with the founders, like oh man, we hate this cucumber dog stuff, we're going to ignore it. But eventually, with the community just enjoying the cucumber dogs so much, there was a whole side collection called, Heroes of Cumberland, of Cucumberland, that one of the collectors came up with, because you have some rights to use the assets of the collection, and they could edit and adapt them to get these cucumber dogs everywhere. So you would have warriors with a cucumber and everything else. And then there's been some cucumber dog traits that have been put in other releases from from Forgotten Runes. So there's kind of that callback between community content, as they call cult content, and the official collection content that keeps coming out. There's a weekly sort of Twitter Spaces for Forgotten Runes called Wizard Wednesday, and they're constantly going over cult content, new stuff that's come
Mm.
up that week in the community, and just celebrating it.
Yeah, I think when you're talking through that, I think so sort of reflecting what you're sort of saying, I think a law is really, really critical to maintain engagement for a prolonged period of time, engagement and attention on a specific collection, right? Um,
Absolutely.
which is going to fundamentally build and accrue value back to the collection and the community. And so, yeah, and if I look at some of the projects that have sort of fallen a little bit flat, I think they're sort of missing that, right? So yeah, so law is super important from what I
Absolutely, and
hear.
if you look at Forgotten Runes through the whole bear market, like the collection's value stayed pretty stable with a lot of volatility in the market, with ETH and everything else. Forgotten Runes and Punks, for that matter, stayed very 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 stable, when you
Mm.
compare it to a lot of other collections that have gone down by 90% or more. And so I think I learned a lot of what I know about lore in the NFT space from Forgotten Runes. I'll always be grateful to the team for getting me involved, in the beginning, and so I've kind of taken that learning and brought it to other projects that I've contributed to.
Let me ask you something. Do you think there's an opportunity to create some law for punks, or do you feel like there already is a law for punks at the moment?
I absolutely think there's an opportunity to create lore for punks, and there already is lore for punks. Punks are unique in the fact that they are the project that they are the water in which all the other projects swim in. Every project, from Bored Apes to whatever, with the PFP model, is inspired by punks. There's traits that are inspired by punks. Traits and attributes. The entire sort of language of the space, was created by punks. And the wonderful thing about punks is that they are the most encompassing digital identity. For instance, I can totally recognize people by their punk, whereas I cannot tell various apes apart, and particularly the mutant apes. I mix up the ape all the time. Which ape is that? Oh God, I can't remember whose ape that is,
Mm,
on Twitter. But with punks, they're like, oh, that's Claire Silver, that's Bit Futures, that's G Money.
mm,
Instant recognition.
mm.
So the lore of punks, it's not necessarily science fiction or fantasy storytelling, although some people have done that. Rick Galbraith has got, his punk stories, punk kind of, really cool, almost comic book style stories that he's done. There's the punk comics, there's all kinds of tales that involve punks. But I think the lore of punks is actually semi-factual, semi-autobiographical, because punk holders are the kind of people that have built Web3, that are founders, innovators, thinkers, builders in the community of crypto.
Mm,
They tend to have a punk, and so the lore of punks is often the factual deeds undertaken, by the people who have been holding those punks.
mm,
So I'm working on a project that is really just getting off the ground called Punk Poems, where I'll be writing poems about people's punks, and I've got these awesome templates to chuck them on. But this is the kind of conversation that I want to have with holders. Like, do they want to have an autobiographical story, or do they want to have a fictional story, or just
mm,
embody a particular emotion or message? But I think with Forgotten Runes, there's a kind of a very open but defined collaborative legendarium, is what they call it. That is,
mm.
very much fantasy based. It's a particular world. It's got magic in it, and it's all kind of overarching structure of it is described by the founders. But with punks, it's really wide open, but it also has this real world aspect, the deeds and achievements of the given holder.
Yeah, I think uh, I think like some of those collections with that actually have a lore, they actually have some really memeable attributes, and I think in a fun way. I think when you're sort of describing punks, it was more factual, builders, original OG type of theme, and I sort of feel like that's not like it's not really memeable, right? It's not like a lot of people can actually have a lot of fun with it and take it on a life of its own. But maybe that's something we can sort of figure out how to have a bit more fun with that. I know there's some elements of it, but I just don't feel like, and I keep saying this all the time, is like, punks don't sit on Twitter and shit post all day and meme, because they're actually, a lot of them are actually out building their own products. So, which is very different from other collections, right? But no, that's super interesting. Maybe that's something we could look into offline.
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
I'm just going to backtrack a little bit because I think our conversation got a little bit sidetracked. But just going back, what was your first NFT? Do you remember what that was that you bought?
The first NFT that I had was probably something that I lazy minted on OpenSea, like a poem. I think the first one was a poem I wrote about that ship that got stuck in the Suez Canal. Um, and I was just sitting on Clubhouse or something, listening to people talk about minting their NFTs, and I was like, I want to mint an NFT, so I minted it, and I don't think anyone ever bought it, so it's still probably sitting there on OpenSea. I think, oh my lord, I mean, I think I bought some stuff from some really cool women artists who are involved on Clubhouse, uh, whose name I'm
That's
not
cool.
remembering right now. Um,
That's okay. And so, like, when did you? I mean, you bought your CryptoPunk. I guess the question is what was the key driver for you to want to get into a punk? I know you sort of made a little bit of ETH and then decided to flip into a punk, but why was it a punk was the first thing you sort of gravitated towards?
well, I was sitting in bed. First thing I did was check the price of ETH. Day to day, I've gained or lost thousands of dollars. I'm not used to that. I'm used to it now. But I was like, you know, this pile of money could be worthless for years. So what am I going to do? Punks tend to go up in value. I'd read the Fat Punk thesis. A lot of people I really looked up to had punks. So I bought a punk as sort of a hedge on the value of ETH. And I thought, okay, 5 years from now, this thing might be more valuable than just keeping the equivalent amount in ETH. And that's what I believed. And I also, as a secondary thing, thought that it would be a good brand for me. I had seen lots of other people using their punk as a really good digital identity or personal brand. And so I wanted to join them. I wanted to be one of the cool kids.
I did too. I'm not sure if I'm in that crowd yet, but hopefully I can get there one day. What was the fat punk thesis you were talking about?
It's like a Medium article about, basically the cultural position of punks and the fact that punks will tend to go up in value as the space goes up in value. Um, and it's an older article. I think it's from 2021.
Okay, I'll have to sort of dig that up. I'd be interested to have a look at that. And then when you were picking out your beautiful punk, I noticed it's knitted orange knitted cap as well, which I'm a big fan of. How did you go about selecting out, I guess, traits and the like? Was it something that's drove you to the orange knitted cap?
Yeah, so basically when I wanted to, I decided I was going to get a punk, and I was like, right off to the Cryptopunks Discord with me then. And I go into the Cryptopunks Discord and I'm like, I'm looking for a floor punk. I want a female punk. I always wear a hat. I'd like a punk with a hat. I actually wanted a girl punk with a fedora, like, a brimmed hat, which is, what I've got. But that's not a thing that exists. So there's a bunch of folks in that channel who are really good at pool fishing. So you can pool fish, you can go get a punk out of the pool. Where people have kind of put it in a liquidity pool. I think it's
Mm.
NFTX, what these are. And they were, coming up with various punks. The floor was going up. I was like, no, I don't want a punk smoking a cigarette. That's not my brand, really. And so then when I saw this one, I'm like, yep, that's her. Go get her. And they got the punk for me and, sold it to me on the Larva Labs website. And my name turned green. Uh, it was the second largest purchase I'd ever made in my life, the first being my house. And it felt good.
Just for the listeners listening out there, a green name. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so we have a Discord server for CryptoPunks that is probably one of the oldest Discord servers in the space. It's an awesome server. And if you have a green name, that means that you have validated that you hold a punk. And there's like a little widget that you can do that on the CryptoPunks website. And then they have a little bot that listens out for what that widget is saying this username holds a punk. And when it determines that you have a punk, your name turns green, which means you have the role of CryptoPunk holder. And you can speak in the secret punk channel, and you can get beyond the sort of general areas of the server and connect with your fellow holders.
It was it was funny. I think they've taken it away now, but I remember access to the punk Discord was open to the public. So you would have me bits in there that had a yellow name, mixing it up with the green names, the punks, and then you have like white names. And so when white names are sort of trying to contribute and shill the stuff, or just like you don't listen to the white namers, you only listen to the green names. So it was a form of social signaling within a Discord that you had a punk, right, which is kind of cool.
Absolutely. And I'm not the kind of person that's really into exclusivity for its own sake. But at the same time, the community of punk holders is by far one of the best social networking and business networking communities that I've ever seen in my life. And it is an absolute honor to have access to it. And, with the amount of scamming and kind of money grabbing that's involved in the space, there's something to be said for, having some private rooms where you can talk with other people who have made a real good faith commitment to the space. They've put their money where their mouth is. They have a punk, and that they're probably not here to scam people. There are some exceptions. There are some
Mm,
scammy punks, but the
mm.
level of, it's much higher signal and much lower noise by and large when you're in a punks only space.
Totally. I think you do sort of feel, I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit biased or rose colored glasses, but I think whenever I connect with a punk, it automatically builds a fair bit of trust for me.
Hmm.
Speaking on Discords and Telegrams, whatever it is, it feels like
Hmm.
people are there because they genuinely enjoy the vibes and not there to necessarily grift and profit. Obviously, you get a few bad eggs here and there. But on the most part, I think punks have probably got some pretty high value sets, which is what I love about it.
Yeah.
Um, and in terms of your collection now, like, are you in this sort of market at the moment? Are you net collecting? Are you net selling? And if you are collecting, like, what are you collecting?
Well, I have two main ENSs that I've got collections on. There's Lorepunk.eth, and there's a few of my Grails vaultables are on that. And then there's the Magpies.eth, which is where you can see me being a shocking degen. Which I've always been. Everyone's like, wow, look at this fancy poet. She's probably got a really fancy collection of NFTs. No, no, I have I have a bunch of degen crap. So during the bear, I was not collecting nearly as much. But as there's been some bounce back this year, I've been trying to collect, but also collect smarter as a degen a lot of the time. I want to have money to buy my friends' projects and to buy stuff that's fine art that I really believe in. But I bought proceed with caution and checks to make money. And I've been doing pretty well this year. I bought more of things instead of just buying one or two, buy three or four, and then you can sell some of them. And still be quids in, and the ones that you continue to hold are basically free at that point. So, a lot of my collection is a bunch of kind of degen projects that have gone to zero. Um,
Like all of us.
yeah, and that's just part of it. That's just part of the learning. I used to have some really strong emotions about my stuff, about my bags, and I really have taken a step back from them emotionally, and I make these decisions in a far more clinical sense. Sometimes I've been pushing that list button and yelling angrily at myself. But it's like, nope, nope, you got to take your profits. This is the year in which we take our profits, like an adult. so, so my collecting is influenced by that. We are here to stack ETH as much as anything else, and you know a lot of times if you want to stay in a community and hold one or two of something, that's fine, but be sure you take in your profits too. And there's no way to time the absolute top. That local top is good enough. Sell. There's a top. Sell.
We've had to learn some pretty hard lessons in this bear market, right? So I'm with
Yeah.
you. I definitely should have taken a lot more off the table. But it was that peak euphoria was just going crazy, right? So you just didn't want
Yeah.
to sit on the sidelines.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and I guess with your NFT career to date, like, do you have any sort of wins or losses that's worth mentioning?
um in terms of my NFT career, I would say that the biggest win that I have is that I have built, with the wonderful help of our amazing community, a network of folks, which means that even if, God forbid, if I was attacked by a scammer, or my stuff was stolen, I have the capacity to earn in the space and get that stuff back. It's like I have a trade in the space, and I think that's my biggest win, is that projects will take me on board to consult and produce lore, and to advise on strategy, and to do social media marketing and stuff like that. And it's a trade. It's like any other skilled trade. I have confidence that I can earn in a bull market, or I can earn in a bear market. In this industry, and that's probably the biggest gift, the biggest win that I've had. People go to university for years to learn a skilled trade, and I've managed to learn while I earn. And I always like to pay that learning back, to pay it forward, as it were. So if people kind of approach me and they're like, how can I get involved in the space as a writer, I'm very free and open with my advice, because people were very free and open with advice to me when I was getting started,
Mm,
and they still are. So it's just one of those kind of circles where you really want to pay back.
mm. That's awesome. And if you look across, I guess, the Twitter space, Do you have a favorite punk personality that comes to mind?
My favorite punk personality is Claire Silver. She has really, really leaned into that punk, and the kind of pink hair appears in lots of her work. Um, and, she could just be making amazing art and selling it for lots of ETH and then not saying anything. But she says stuff as well. She is a huge advocate for the, potential of AI art. She shares so much knowledge on how to create awesome prompts and how to get where she's going. And she's always kind of foregrounding emerging AI artists, particularly women and folks from marginalized communities. And she gets so much poop flung at her from people who don't like AI art or whatever, but she's completely fearless and courageous, standing up and
Mm.
advocating for that part of the space. And I'm just really proud of her, and I think she really does the space credit.
I think so too. I think she's a beautiful soul and
Mm,
just a genuine sort of punk, a real great representative to be a punk too. To be frank,
mm.
it's just a little bit unfortunate. Yeah, she is getting a lot of negative. And I guess with anything new like AI, I mean, it is quite polarizing on the topic, yeah, especially when it comes to art. So I think she's tackling a very heavy topic and taking that on her shoulders and leading the way, right? I think thought leaders is very punk as well. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Claire.
Yeah, she's great. I mean, everyone was like, "Oh man, that AI art is stupid. I could make something like that in 5 minutes." I like show them some of Claire's work. I'm like, "All right, take 5 minutes and you see if you can get something like this because you can't. It's really, really hard."
Yeah.
Um, and I think that the people who are angry about AI, they don't need to be angry at Claire. They need to be angry at corporations.
Mm,
Because it's a social problem. If corporations don't want to pay artists and they're happy getting mediocre AI pulls with like seven fingers on them that are just sort of crap, like obviously they just threw a sentence in there, that's on them, but it's not Claire's fault.
mm. And you've been a punk for a while now, and I think you've sort of been through, I guess, the ups and downs of being a punk in the punk community. But for you, like, how would you describe punk culture as it stands today?
I think punk culture is decidedly more countercultural and anti-capitalist than a lot of people want to acknowledge. If you look at what Matt and John were doing when they were combining the traits for punks and creating the punks, they were inspired by like the punk community in London in like the 1980s and stuff like that. And that was an incredibly, incredibly diverse community. People from all different races, all different ethnicities and genders, building something creative together, kind of outside the world of corporate culture and corporate profit. That's where punks came from. And punk is still that. It's not about luxury brands or whatever other kind of hyper corporate thing is trying to get their fingers on it. If you look at crypto, it was not designed, I've written this in articles I've written for Venture Punk. It wasn't designed to make us all rich. It's designed to make us all free. The kind of ethos of the Satoshi Nakamoto white paper and the whole notion of a decentralized, trustless, permissionless global distributed supercomputer is a really punk thing. And it can give autonomy to marginalized groups of people, and that's what crypto is supposed to be about, rather than a money printer casino go burr kind of kind of situation. So I really like to talk about what punk culture is and what it is not, and kind of remind people not to slavishly follow the movements of various corporations in the hope that it pumps your bags. It's about, where is crypto going long term? I think crypto needs punk values, needs to be in touch with punk values. And I think punk holders have an opportunity to help, remind people of that and make that happen.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, just from a few punk casts that I've had, I think there's varying degrees of where punks stand on this, right? So on the one hand, you have the absolute purists, punk values. You're there to really lead the way, set the standard. Completely believe in decentralization and I guess the free economy. And then on the other side, you have people that are grifters, absolutely here just for profit and just willing to sort of trade in and out as a sort of when they see fit. And then you get sort of people that sort of sit in the middle. But I hope that most of the punks that join the community can find a way to become a little bit more purist. And I think that's where the sweet spot is. I mean, 6529, I think I've had OMZ on the podcast before. And, when you listen to them and how they talk about how they see the space, it's absolutely, it's pure, right? I think they have genuine intent in terms of what punks are and what they sort of represent. So yeah, I think you've summarized it quite well. Um, and I think maybe just a few more, I guess, contentious sort of topics when it comes to punk culture. What are your views and thoughts on V1 punks?
About V1 punks, I think it's a punk value to respect the intent of the artists and the creators of a project. And Matt and John created punks to be not just one individual punk. It's all 10,000 of the punks plus the contract in which they were deployed. That's part of the art project, is this decentralized, permissionless, fee-free contract in which anybody can start trading the punks. That was the project. And V1 punks were released, and uh, the marketplace wasn't working, so they were replaced with the V2 punks, where it did work. And Matt and John, I think, have called the V1 punks broken frames. And so they are not the canonical punk, if you're actually going to respect the artist and the artist's intent. The V2 punks are the canonical punk project. So, are people who've put a wrapper on the V1 punks and are collecting them and stuff, that's fine, but it's their own project. It's not Cryptopunks. It's another project. It's V1 punks. It's not, they shouldn't be supplanting or taking over for standard punks.
Mhm. No, it's a super interesting topic. I'm not sure where my mind is on it all, but it's just good to get different perspectives, and hopefully over time I could sort of navigate my way through. And then I guess the next question then as well is like, how did you feel about the Yuga acquisition um, during the sort of punk journey?
I mean, I was very much optimistic about the capacity for punks to get um, a license to use the IP. Uh, so that was the main thing that I was really optimistic about with Yuga. Um, I think that Noah is bringing a lot of heart and a lot of experience and really positive cultural uh, sort of knowledge that he has from the mainstream world. He's bringing that to punks. And I think that punks have a good opportunity with Yuga. There's punks being displayed in museums. I think he's gotten them into a couple of museums now. And
Mm.
Yuga and Noah are really enshrining the ethos of punks by supporting and encouraging projects that holders are building on punks. So I know that he's very encouraging of things like this podcast, like Punk's Post that Rick Galbraith is doing. Um, And, you know, if God forbid something happened in the space where Yuga's star began to set, where, you know, the value of Yuga products and the value of the company changed, I think that punks are resilient, that the project is resilient, you know, that there hasn't been any meddling with or interfering with punks from Yuga. It's been very hands off, very respectful. And so I think that, you know, punks are benefiting by being with Yuga right now, but if that changes, punks will be okay anyway.
Mm, mm. Yeah, it was an interesting one, right? Because I think on the one hand, it's like, well, I don't think there would be any other better custodian or owner out there outside of Yuga at the moment. I mean, Matt and John just couldn't manage the community vibes, right? And nor did they have any want or need or intent to do that, right? And so I think Yuga is probably the best option, and they've done a really good job, I think, in really trying to propagate the punk brand and elevating it, you know, with the donations to the museums as you were talking about, which is pretty cool. So yeah, it'll be interesting to sort of see how this works itself out. I sort of feel like punk culture still has a bit more to evolve and develop. There's sort of mixed views within the community at the moment, but hopefully we can get better aligned on where we're sort of going with that. Um, and so I guess getting on to one of the last questions of the podcast is if you could pass on a message to the next owner of your punk, what would you like to say to them?
Oh, that's a really interesting one. I expect to be owning this punk for a heck of a long time, and I'm going to be here for quite a while. Um, so I guess I would just say, you know, wear her with pride. I guess. I have every confidence that punks will still be around, that the Ethereum virtual machine will still be around, that the internet will still be around, that humanity will still be around, the planet Earth will still be here with people on it. But it's like I'm thinking 50 years into the future or whatever. Um, you know, when somebody else owns this punk, what kind of a world are we going to live in? There's a lot of opportunities and there's a lot of things to be afraid of. So I just hope that you know the people who have punks now were part of the elite of human culture, which is not something I ever thought I would say. That I would be a member of any kind of elite, but you know we're a member of this club that's really really tiny, and is about the future. So I think that if we want to have an imagination of the conversations we have with the next owners of our punks, it behooves us now to, you know, fight climate change, to work for peace, and to work for a world where everybody has enough and everybody is safe, because otherwise the world will fall apart, the Ethereum virtual machine will fall apart, and nobody will know or care what a punk is. It'll be like a footnote in a book in a university that nobody attends, with the lights all out and, you know, apocalyptic heck. Uh, so yeah, I mean that's the thing. We are at this inflection point with the future, and I want a future of prosperity and freedom for everybody, not just a bunch of little enclaves, you know, where most of the world is a hellhole. Um, but then you know, a couple of people with their punks have like this little blimp that they live on, like, you know, the Fallout games or the Bioshock games or something like that. You know, we got to have peace and security and safety for everybody.
I hope that is the case, very much the case. Um, and Lorepunk, this was a really fun conversation. So thank you so much for spending the time and to come on PunkCast. I guess last question for you is, you know, any sort of closing comments, and you know, how can sort of people find you?
Well, you know, thank you for having me on, Maxwell. It's been so much fun, and you have very deep thinking. You encourage very deep thinking with your questions. And, if people want to find me, they can go to Lorepunk.eth on Twitter. And there's lots of different ways to get a hold of me there. Just, my DMs are open. And I'm really happy to give people advice about how they can get started as lore writers, or if you have any kind of lore problems or interesting lore puzzles for your project that you would like me to help you solve. I'm always happy to talk to anybody who's building something and to share what I know.
That's super promising for everybody there that's looking to become an aspiring writer in Web3. So definitely hit Lorepunk up for that. But guys and Lorepunk, thank you so much again. This was fun. And that wraps up for another week of PunkCast. And yeah, we're back next week, and we'll be back with another Punk. Bye for now.